Greetings, Guardians. My name is Bife here. In our expansive campaign against the Dreadnought, we've not been the only ones to take the fight to the enemy. Few have been as fierce to our opposition or as vital to our own efforts against the Dreadnought as Sloane. Her place within this new offensive against the Hive was cemented thanks to her time of exile on Saturn's moon of Titan. While the moon was captured within the Ascendant Plane, thanks to the actions of the Witness, she was the lone Guardian who remained behind to defend it and fight off the forces of Zivur Wrath that were stationed there. Over the years that she spent on Titan, she would eventually have an unfortunate encounter with Zivur Wrath, and though she would manage to escape, she was forever scarred by the events. But this scar was not a physical thing that might heal over time. Instead, it was a wound born of Taken corruption that would slowly eat away at the Deputy Commander. But this wound was not without its advantages, and it granted Sloane a unique degree of insight. Sloane's deeper connection to the Taken, being the only Guardian to have become Taken and the first to learn how to control such a power, has given us a chance to stop the Dreadnought's eversion anchors before they abduct more planets. For this reason alone, the Deputy Commander is one of the most important allies that we have in this war, and that's before we even discuss everything else that she's doing to assist us. But not everything is right with Sloane. Sloane's resolve is unbroken, but she's been forced to interact with a power beyond what any of us have faced, even beyond the Witness. That Taken power that she interacted with has tested her before, but even with Zivur Wrath being weakened, Sloane still has to deal with something else, whispering in the background. Whispers from the deep. So today, we're going to dive into Sloane's story with the Taken, and we're going to talk about the influence behind the Taken affliction that she will now bear, potentially for the rest of her life. So when it comes to Deputy Commander Sloane, I think we have a few sources for her actual experience with Taken energy and the influences behind it. I'm not going to go over the time when she was corrupted by this Taken power, because all of that's from back in the Season of the Deep and there's plenty of video stuff covering all of that. I think you can check my coverage from back then if you are interested. Today I wanted to check in on the more contemporary stuff, and in particular, I think there are 3 or so sources that we can really pull from to examine this more closely. The first of them is from a missing voice line that we would otherwise have gotten from Sloane in orbit. It still shows up as subtitles. Sloane says a lot here about your first steps on the path of resolve that she is guiding you down and that she also has walked. That path has allowed her to control the Taken energy within her. But the thing is that she mentions the deep here directly. It's not voiced in-game due to the ongoing SAG-AFTRA strike, so I'll be reading it for you directly. You've taken your first steps into a very deep well. The Dreadnought isn't going to hold back, and as long as it can use those anchors like weapons, neither can we. Lots of things push a person to seek out being taken. Loss, weakness, power, revenge. It's important to remember that the promises the Deep makes you are just bad deals. Don't let yourself get wrapped up in them. Control and resolve, stick to the plan, and we'll all see this through. I've got Drifter doing anchor recon. If he turns anything up, I'll give you a call. Until then, keep squeezing. So, it seems a little bit odd, because this is kind of a line that's honestly very passive, even though it's presented to a lot of people in orbit. It's weird because, well, this is a huge admission. Not only do we get the admission that Sloane knows that there is a voice within the Deep, which is spelled with a capital D and is therefore a proper noun, aka a person or a place, but we also get the admission that the Deep is making offers to those that become Taken, and that voice is the one behind them. Sloane obviously knows this because she can hear that voice and is tapped into the same Taken power that all the other Taken are bound to. This on its own seems like a bit of a massive point that sort of goes under the radar a little. I mean, Sloane is basically admitting that the Taken are bound by a voice beyond their comprehension and that it talks to all of them, offering them what they want. This makes me consider an interesting possibility that I think has kind of been stated a bunch, but is kind of left back in the old lore for people to consider. And that's that the old Taken King Grimoire cards for the individual Taken are not from the perspective of Oryx, but again, are from the perspective instead of the one who is inevitably behind that voice in the deep, the Winnower. And again, this all seems to make a lot more sense. There's so much talk nowadays about taking up a knife and becoming sharp, and you'll see more of that as time goes on and as we read more of the lore today. The Winnower clearly feels like it's there. It's got those kind of grubby fingerprints that you can sort of always tell. It's indelibly there. It leaves its mark. And yes, we've never truly had that little bit confirmed that it is the Winnower talking in the Taken King Grimoire cards for the individual Taken. It could still be an intermediary force instead that's under the Winnower's control. But then again, the Tablets of Ruin from this season give us further context and show us something else too. Namely, it confirms as fact that Oryx's meeting with the Deep in the Books of Sorrow, verse 4.2, was actually a meeting with the Winnower, given that the quote in the flavor text is from that verse verbatim, verse 4.2, majestic, majestic. So it seems pretty conclusive. Sloane and the other Taken can hear the voice of the Winnower, the voice that both Sloane and Oryx describe as the Deep, which the game confirms is the Winnower. They can hear the offers that the Winnower is making, and Sloane has been actively pushing through all of that as time goes on. So just recontextualize that for a second, because in those moments where she was being completely assaulted by the warmongering will of Xivu Arath on Titan, where she nearly killed Zavala, she wasn't just trying to hold back Xivu Arath, she was also trying to hold back the Winnower and all the offers that it was giving quietly. We have no idea whether this is something that has affected her long term, but we do get some further notes on it a little bit later. This is why we have to consider some of the other lore that's cropped up in Heresy that's related to Sloane's story, and it's here that we can talk about further sources for all of this. One is the lore tab of the Adamantite, and the other is the lore tab of the Apostate's Blade Helm. Of course, I say helm, it's different according to each class. The lore tab is the same on all three. Adamantite is more about the nature of the Taken as compared to Sloane, and it talks a lot about the innate hunger of the Taken that she uses her resolve to fight off. The Apostate's Blade Helmet, on the other hand, is much more about Sloane's own recognition that the tempting voice of the Winnower in the background, or the Deep as she calls it, is still trying to reel her in. We'll save that one for last. Here's what we learn from the Adamantite. Inflexibility is its own virtue. Sloane. Surrounded. They hate her, but it's an empty hate, driven by an instinctual quantum state. She knows because that hate is a part of her too. She approaches them head-on, presenting as wide of a target as she can, her pauldrons shining in a sea of undulating mouths. The nearest takes the bait, unable to ignore its hunger. That hunger is a part of her too. She empathizes as she turns slightly, and a dark, barbed appendage flicks past her cheek, causing sparks to chime off her armored shoulder. The Taken thrall can't recover before her Roderick C tears its approximation of a leg to pieces, dropping its writhing skull directly in line with her muzzle. Its death wail echoes in tandem with her sidearm, while its hunger for her lingers as its body shreds away at an atomic level. The shadows around her are equally starved. She knows because she's starved too. Unlike them, she controls it. For every shadow around her, beckoning her to join them, her muzzle cracks. She slips, she ducks, and everywhere she sees an opening, her will hardens. She throws her bones, wrapped in unrelenting plasteel, into the fray. She puts bullets into conjured brainstems, facts dispersing feelings. Resolve got Sloane through Titan. Resolve will get her, and everyone still alive, through this. It's too late for Eris. It might be too late for Drifter. Run off for the last time to who knows where. In the bowels of this living beast of a ship. She turns slowly, looking for targets. Detecting no sentient shadows, she keys a switch on her armored gauntlet. Landing zone is clear. Keep the Dreadnought patrols coming. We'll take it inch by inch if we have to. So Sloane is constantly feeling the same hunger as all the other Taken. A hunger that leads them to surrender to the Winnower's offering. The difference between these Taken and Sloane is partly due to Asa shielding Sloane, which we'll get to in a bit. It's something mentioned in the next lore tab we're reading. But it's more than just that, because other Taken entities aren't just abducted, not all the time. There isn't always a fight against the will of the Winnower. In some cases, they allow themselves to be taken and give in to the Winnower's offering willingly on account of the fact that they are enticed by what it has to offer and that they don't have the absolutely titanic concentrated willpower of one of Earth's greatest guardians. And for that matter, another little small side note, can we please get Sloane a better weapon? Like, I know she has her old Crown Splitter sword, which is now in her possession, but that is a Roderick C she's using, a weapon I'm sure some of you have vague memories of because you've dismantled a bunch of them. You know why? Because it's a blue sidearm. Yeah, someone throw her an old duty bound, or maybe just a different sidearm, a Boudica C if she wants Haka weapons that at least have a second perk. Give her a legendary. I mean, hell, get her a rocket sidearm. Give Sloane nice things, Banshee. God damn it. Jokes aside, Sloane's a pillar of strength here for being able to stave off that hunger in the same way that she has for so long. She's been doing this for years, and only came close to breaking a single time when pressed by the will of Xivu Arath, which was bearing down on her at the end of the Season of the Deep. But she was able to quickly step back with the assistance of friends. But just as Sloane has plenty of resolve, she also has plenty of wisdom, and she knows that this is a pattern that cannot last forever, because it is a pattern of attrition. We learn as much from the other lore tab that I mentioned, the Apostate's Blade Helm. There is a knife for you. To be taken is to yield. Sloane hears it, that refrain that haunted her in Titan's depths. Take, live, and quieter behind it, something that stirs, a whispered offering. There is a knife. That part is newer, and it troubles Sloane. A bond with Asa insulates, protects. There can be no claim on her by force, but that says nothing of Sloane's own will. No material yet exists that cannot be worn down in time. Oceans, whether methane or water, break rock into sand. Any yielding is akin to ceding entirely. Sloane cordons off any sense of that nagging offer. She will have no risk of slipping. She will know perfectly where she ends, where the Taken begins. There is no room for doubt. She thinks in her meditation of Eris. Eris who went down into the pit. Eris who came back changed. Eris, hive enough to stand as god of vengeance. Does Eris have such a delineation? Does Eris say, here is the hive and here is Eris Morn, and never the two shall meet? No, she cannot. Or that new hive god made chitinous from her flesh would have been someone else. Sloane imagines, what if she did the same? What if she took into her hands a grievous knife and said, Sloane is the one who holds the knife. Sloane is the knife. She is sharp, sharper and alight with the sterile flame of the Taken. It is not the same. Sloane knows it, heart deep. Bone deep. She cannot put that knife down once she has taken it up. Not like Eris and the hive. What is taken is not given back. No, it cannot be the same. So there's an interesting note here. I think this makes reference potentially to both the Winnower and the Echo of Navigation, given that it talks about the newer part to those quiet offerings made in the deep, those things she had to endure while she was on Titan. The initial offer is merely take, live, which I believe is the voice of the Winnower itself, And that newer voice saying, "Take up the knife," I think might be further reinforcement from the echo of navigation, something like Oryx's remnant spirit, repeating the old lines that he would have made when he made his proclamations to each individual that would have been one of his taken. But regardless, this power comes from the same source, and Sloane here is facing up against a grim reality. The reality that no matter how much she holds off the offer from the whispering voice of the deep, she will not be able to hold out forever. She knows that she only needs to fail once, and only briefly. She only needs to give in one time and pick up the knife being offered to her. When she does, she knows she will never be able to return. The voice has been whispering to her since Titan, and she's only truly completely insulated from the worst effects of being taken because she is protected by Arsa, something which again is revealed in this passage. Without that protection, she would be in a lot of trouble by the looks of things. But that is to say nothing about the prior mention of temptation. Arsa is essentially stopping the Winnower or any other who might attempt to take Sloane from using the metaphorical stick to control and abduct her. Instead, those forces are only able to push for control using the metaphorical carrot instead. But that carrot has been offered for years, and I think more importantly, is being offered by the equivalent of a god. A mostly quiet god who passively is willing to look and wait and sit back as the world unfolds according to its plans, but a god nonetheless, and not some god of the hive that is merely a powerful paracausal being. This may be an individual closer to godhood than even the Witness, an individual on par with the Traveler at last, an individual who was there before time itself began, at least if we're to believe its own accounts. There is only so much Sloane can truly do to hold off that kind of power for so long, and all the while there is an offer in the background that acts as a sort of forbidden get-out-of-jail-free card. If ever she needs more power, if she is ever pressed to the point of breaking, if she ever finds herself unable to save those she needs to protect, the offer is always there. And if in one of those moments Sloane falls and gives in momentarily to temptation, allowing her resolve to falter, then she will fall in the same manner that so many taken have fallen before her. Slowly, gently. This is how a life is taken. And so we should be aware, as we reach into this power, we may have to go down the same journey. Sloane is unquestionably strong, and I don't think she'll be worn down anytime soon, but we need to be aware that even if it takes centuries, Sloane is a ticking time bomb. And above all, we absolutely need to protect Arsa. If Arsa is destroyed, if she dies, even if she is significantly weakened, then the Winnower might be able to apply that more forceful method of abduction. It's worth remembering that in that moment where Arsa was nearly taken by Xivu Arath at the end of the Season of the Deep, Sloane could feel that moment of her power waning. It was in that moment, just after the ritual was broken, that Sloane herself was possessed by Xivu Arath. Arsa is her weak link. If we want to protect Sloane, we need to protect the Leviathan of Titan. But it does lead us to another interesting question, which I mentioned a little earlier. If Sloane is being protected from abduction by forceful means by Arsa, then what's protecting us? If it is the echo of navigation that would potentially be engaging in the act of taking, then it seems as though this is something where the echo itself is holding off purely for the sake of preserving Oryx's legacy. After all, if we are to take that power of the Taken, we eventually might also step forth into the deep and mantle it, and therefore we would not be taken, we would be the one to control it. But what if it is the Winnower instead? Why has it not simply chosen to abduct us? I suppose perhaps it's because we have an interesting, somewhat personal rapport with the Winnower, given that it keeps reaching on out to us. That alone might not be it though. I can't shake the sense that we're engaging with this power purely because it is allowing itself to be engaged with. And my further question is, what happens when we go down this path and allow it to get its claws into us? There is a lot we have yet to see. Ultimately, I think it comes down to this. Beware the whispers, and beware what they offer. That's all from me for now though. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, go ahead and leave a like, and leave your own thoughts down below in the comments section. What do you reckon? Do you think this is more the Winnower, as I've consistently stated? Or do you reckon that this is something that is a little bit more engaged with us thanks to the echo of navigation and the memory of Oryx that it brings with it? Either way, if you enjoyed this video and want more lore content from universes near and far, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on email notifications. Little update for those of you on the Monster Hunter side of things. I have a very interesting piece of content with a Monster Hunter creator coming up very soon, something which I think a lot of you should like. There's been a lot of myth and rumor around that universe, and hopefully this is something I will be able to use to dispel it. Expect something that's a little bit longer. This has not been recorded yet, but plans are in motion, and I'm very excited for you to see what the end result is. Anyway, that's all from me for now. Thank you so much for watching, and in the meantime, my name is Bife. Rodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.